Coming up next on the Jeff Crilley Show, relationships are so important. If you don't invest in them, your competition will. We'll hear from an international expert next.
Many are predicting that the worst is yet to come, which is unfortunate, said one person here. Until now, they've enjoyed the reputation of being the nation's icebox.
Watched a burglar in his home this morning by webcam.
As a journalist of over 25 years, stories are what make my world turn.
Reporting live from the Dallas newsroom tonight, Jeff Crilley, Fox 4 News.
But in 2008, I took the jump from my familiar life and started a PR firm from my home.
We're talking about anyone with a camcorder like the one I'm using becomes a television network.
We started slowly growing the company, and we now have over 100 clients, and we've branched into the world of live digital broadcasting. I now own 8 different TV studios and have a huge team, and the stories that I now get to share are sometimes the most important of my life. Life has a funny way of coming around full circle. This is the Jeff Crilley Show.
Well, there's an old saying in the networking world, you gotta circulate to percolate. But we all know people who go into a room and they're like a life insurance salesperson and their objective is to sell you something or collect the most cards. But it's really about relationships. To talk about that today, Judy Hoberman, she is an author, a TedX speaker, and a coach. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. It is all about relationships, isn't it?
It is, and we actually have known each other now for more than a decade, I want to say.
Absolutely.
Right? More than a decade. And I want to brag on Judy, because she coached my daughter to be the vice president of this company. So thank you for the gift that you gave us.
It was my pleasure, and she is an amazing young woman.
Absolutely. So tell us more about your journey. How did this start out for you? How did you become a coach?
Well, believe it or not, I was selling life insurance.
Were you? Sorry.
I was holding on to this table.
But you were never that person.
No. Actually, I was always the #1 salesperson, and I never sold anything, because what I did was I built relationships. That's what it's all about. And I never had to sell anybody anything, because what I did was I would ask a lot of questions. And you can ask anybody that knows me as the question queen. They would roll their eyes, because there can't possibly be more questions, but I had them. And what I was doing was I was working for somebody else, and I realized it was not the right environment. So I jumped ship. And I jumped ship at a point in my life where I didn't have the parachute, but I jumped anyway. And what I did was I was thinking, like, if I was starting all over, what would I have wanted? And I would have wanted somebody that would understand what it was like to be the only female, or what it was like to be a single mom in business, and all the other things that led into that particular situation. And so what I did was I became that woman. I became the mentor, I became the coach, I became the trainer, I became the speaker. And it just started out with one person, and it just kept growing, and here I am.
And she's a tremendous speaker. I've had the privilege of hearing her several times. We've got some video of her at a TedX speech. That's a lot of pressure, because TedX is a certain number of minutes, right?
Yes. There's a lot of regulations. You know, it's supposed to be 18, but they like 15, and you have to stand in one spot, and I'm a walker and a talker, and you have to stand here because they have to video you, and it has to be something that isn't too controversial, but it has to be something that is valuable. And it was very personal to me, because the story I told was the first time I told it out loud, and I told it on TED Talk. But it was probably one of the best things I ever did, and it was what I needed to do at that point in my life.
And I know that the speaking world has been weird because of COVID, and a lot of stuff got canceled. As you go out there speaking these days, what are you called on to speak?
Interesting. It's some of it is still about how to react in this world, and how to change, and how to pivot, and how to shift, and all that. But really, it's more of the basics. I talk a lot about women and its confidence, the imposter syndrome, motivation, all of the things that we need to do in order to be successful. But you can't do the things you want to do unless you fix this. And so I'm always asked to speak about the things that women are really looking to accomplish.
And I love the titles of your book. They're so creative. We're going to start with your latest book, Walking on the Glass Floor. Okay, tell us about that book.
So this was actually born from my radio shows, because I always do a monologue. And when I looked at all my monologues, there were 7 qualities that I kept repeating over and over different ways. And they were all leadership. So the book is about 7 qualities of basically great leaders. And they're all about the, I don't want to say soft skills, but they are the softer skills, the empathetic, being generous, being courageous, being passionate. And that's how the book came about. And it's a really good book.
And it's so critical now, especially with quiet
Yes.
quitting and job
Yes.
hopping, and
Yes.
the millennials and the Gen Zs, they don't have the same loyalty that an older generation might have.
They don't, but everybody has the same challenges and the same qualities, and so if we can just, make them even more important to somebody, that's what people are looking for. That's what employers are looking for, that's what corporations are looking for, and that's actually what women are looking for.
Okay, I want to talk about the first book. This is the book that we met over, Selling in a Skirt. Again, a great title. Tell us about that book.
So that was when I first jumped ship, and I hired a business coach, and I had never had a business coach before, and this woman was amazing, and she didn't stand for any of my nonsense. And she said, you're going to write a book, you have 30 years of experience. And I said, I'm not writing a book, I have no desire, I don't care about being number one bestseller. She says, no, you need to write a book. And so back and forth over weeks, and I wrote a book. And it's all about how to sell like a woman, but also why men need to read it. It's because how do you work with women? How do you work for women? Or how do you encourage women? How do you communicate with women? And so it's really an important book. It's all about sales. It's all about doing the things you need to do to be a great salesperson.
When you gave me an example one time when you were telling me about the book, and the example you gave was Victoria, your wife, buys completely differently than you do,
Yes.
Jeff. If she went to an expensive jewelry counter and the clerk behind the desk was being rude to her, there's no way Victoria would reward that salesperson with her business. And I went home and asked my wife, and sure enough, you were absolutely right. But people do think it's one size fits all.
It isn't. And even male-female, it's very different. First of all, if she went into a very expensive jewelry store and there was a piece of jewelry that she absolutely loved and the person was rude, she'd find it somewhere else. I guarantee it. But if the person was bringing her into a conversation and wasn't rude and was kind, not only would she buy something, but she would be telling her friends, oh, you have to go to such and such because they're wonderful. Men will go in because they're very focused and very transactional. They're going to go in and say, I want that and that and that, and that's it. And if they say, would you like to see this? You're like, no, that and that and that. So, and they're done. Women are more shopping. They buy the way they shop the way they buy, and they want to see everything because it's part of their makeup.
And they have to like you to buy
Oh
from
my
you.
goodness, it's that old thing that we were taught when we were little. People have to, know, like, and trust you. And so when you do that, you win. You definitely win. And you don't have to sell. You just have a conversation, which is what this is all about.
And no one in the market has talked about this. I mean, you have all these, Grant Cardones out there teaching you how to sell, but I don't think there's anybody who's talking about the psychology of sales when it comes to gender.
I think that if somebody would just sit down and watch, just observe, you'd be able to really figure it out 1, 2, 3, because you just have to look. I'm telling you, go back to Victoria. I know Victoria would never buy something if somebody was rude or rude to you.
Right. Oh, absolutely. You are so wise. Okay, so you have a new program. Talk about Boardroom.
The Boardroom for Women is about women in leadership. And when you get to a certain point, I don't like to call them this, but I like to refer to them as the lonely leader. You're at the top, you don't know who to be able to rely on, you don't know who has a hidden agenda, you don't know who you can trust, and they're just sitting there and they have lots to get out. So the Boardroom for Women is about a group of women at the same level that are at the same point in their lives, in their careers, and they're looking for their own personal board of directors. And so it's a very confidential space, and it's really something that once you're in it, these women will travel with you probably your whole entire life because you're going to build that relationship.
Tell us about the clients you like to work with these days.
So these days, I am much more into the executive space. I still have all my programs for entrepreneurs, never giving that up because that's how my business was started, and I love, love, love them. But now it's time for me to move over here as well and really go talk to the companies that want to invest in their women and the women that want to invest in themselves. And they're usually executive women who have been in their positions, maybe 5 years to 10 years or so, and they just need some place. They need space, they need community, they need connection.
And I want to encourage my audience to go to her social media because she puts up just dozens and dozens of wonderful videos, much like this one.
So let me tell you a story about what happened to me one day when I was out selling. I'm in an appointment and I'm talking to this woman who has never looked up when I walk through the door. I did my entire appointment talking to the top of her head, the entire appointment. She never, ever said a word until I was all finished and asked me, who should I make the check out to? This whole time I thought she was just being rude, but obviously she was listening to what I was saying. At the very end, she said to me, I bet you thought I was being rude to you, but I really wasn't. I trusted you when you walked through the door, and I decided to write down a whole entire list of referrals for you. Here's their name and their phone numbers, and I'm going to call them first to make sure that they accept your phone call. That's how you do it. You wait to talk to somebody, you get some trust, you build rapport, and you get referrals. The best part of prospecting is when you gain the trust with someone and you receive referral.
I love that story because even you were surprised. I mean, you thought you were either being disrespected or were not making a connection.
All I remember was thinking to myself, I can't believe how rude she is. And when she said that to me, I bet you thought I was rude. I thought, oh my goodness, did that come out of my mouth? Because she knew it, but she was so busy, writing names down and everything, and it was so important to her that whatever I was showing her, she was going to buy. And I don't know how she knew when I walked in the door that I was different, but that's exactly what she said. When you walked in, I knew you were different.
And talk about the energy that you get from people when you're talking with them, because as I get older and older, I'm more attuned to not just body language, but energy.
Yeah.
You can read it, can't you?
You can, and you can feel it. And sometimes it's not the right energy, and I find myself taking a step backwards because it's like you don't want that energy near you. But when you have good energy, all you want to do is be around somebody. That's it. When I first started, I had nothing. I had a business card, nothing else. And I was at an event, and this woman came up to me out of nowhere, and she said, I don't know what you're selling, I don't know what you're doing, but I need for you to talk to my group. Wow. She said, you are so energetic. And I thought, well, that was good. Or making phone calls. I was so excited on the phone, people would say, I don't care what you're selling. You need to be here. I never, ever got stood up, ever, because people were waiting for me.
And I think the challenge for most bosses now, especially with a sales team, is they may have been a hotshot salesperson and then they get promoted to boss, but they really don't know how to manage, coach a team.
Right, and you really have to know your people. That's my biggest thing, is know your people. You have to know why they're sitting there, why they want to be in your company, and more importantly, where they want to go. I used to ask all my people that I recruited, I would say, tell me where you want to be in this company. And it's only one of three things. One, I just want to produce, and I say just because I don't like when they say just. That means it's so much harder than that. I just want to produce. Two, I want to go into leadership. Or three, I want your position. So I would say, you want to be a producer? I'll show you the journey. You want to go into leadership? I'll show you the journey. You want my position? I would laugh and say, I'll show you the journey. Because a great leader wants to be promoted out of their position. That's really what happens. But I knew my people. I knew what they needed, and I knew where they wanted to go. So I was always on top of them, and people would say, and not micromanaging, people would say to me, how do you people stay? How are they making money? What are you doing? I'm like, I just have relationships with them.
How does somebody know when they need to bring a Judy Hoberman into their life?
It could be anything. It could be that the person isn't producing. It could be that the person is not motivated any longer. It could be that the person is feeling like they aren't good enough or smart enough or shouldn't be in that position, or they want to get promoted, and it could be any of those things. And most of the time people will say, I need a sales coach, and it's never about sales, ever, 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 ever. But until you fix this and this and this, your sales are not going to increase.
Wow.
Yeah.
Powerful. Okay, we've got a little time left. Final thoughts. What would you like to leave people with?
Well, I'd like to say that this is all about relationships. And believe it or not, last week was my birthday, and Jeff reached out and said, happy birthday. And the next thing he said was, God, you haven't been on my show in a long time. We must do this. That's how it works.
Amen. And I'm so glad you're back in my life.
Me too.
Okay, we're going to end with the website, which is sellinginaskirt.com. The great Judy Hoberman. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks so much.
That's it for now. We'll see you next time.